Hey artist, today I want to show you a little bit about a kind of art called quilling. And I'm guessing this is probably new to most of you because it's not something we've ever talked about in art class before. And it's kind of new to me too. I've never really done it. And so it's something I've been experimenting with lately. And I thought you guys might like trying it at home as well. And when you look at this photograph, this is a photo of a quilling art project. You notice that it's made with paper, but it's paper that's actually standing on its end. If you imagine lots of colorful strips of paper like you might use for weaving, instead of gluing them flat on the page, the artist has glued them standing up on their ends and also curled them around things like maybe a pencil or another tool to make these beautiful little spiral designs. Historians think that the name quilling came from when this art form first started. The artist who made it probably wrapped the pieces of paper around a quill to get that spiral effect. Now, you can do simple quilling projects or really fancy ones. This one is pretty fancy, but when you first start out, it can be a little tricky, so you might start with something easier, like these quilling designs. Still very cool and creative. But artists who do this a lot start to do designs that are really fancy. Check this out. All of these are made with pieces of paper that are bent into shapes or twisted and curled to create these beautiful designs. Now, this one is mine. It's a little bit more simple, but I'm just learning and experimenting. And so in the second part of the video, I'm going to show you how you can try a quilling project too. So the first thing that you'll need to do to get started on your quilling project is to gather up the supplies you need. You'll need some colorful pieces of paper, and they could be any size or color that you like. They could be regular pieces of paper, or you could find some recycled materials. This is an old piece of paper that I cut up to use, and you'll probably want a bigger paper to glue your work on. It could be colorful or it could be white. You're going to need some scissors, and then you will definitely need glue. I'm kind of a bad art teacher today because I don't have a glue bottle, and glue bottle is a great way to do this project. You could try a glue stick, but I think it might be a little bit harder. But what I'm going to do is actually, I think maybe the best. If you have a kind of glue, either Elmer's white glue or a kind of glue like this that you can use with a paintbrush, I think that's going to make my gluing a little bit easier. This is called Mod Podge. It's just a special, like kind of strong kind of art glue, but Elmer's glue would work too. So the first thing that you'll want to do is use your scissors to cut your colorful papers into some strips. And you can experiment with making some skinny and some fatter, making some long and some short, because that will change how your artwork looks in the quilling. So you can experiment with that. You can also get with your supplies some different tools to wrap the quilled pieces of paper around. And you can experiment with wrapping them around things that are fat, things that are skinny, like this wood stick. You can wrap it around things that are round and things that are a little bit bumpy. And all of those things may change the way that your curled up paper looks. Now, if you're a kindergartner, or if you remember in kindergarten, one of your first art projects in the fall is we learned how to make a sculpture with paper, right? And we practiced rolling a piece of paper around an art supply, like a crayon or a pencil. And it takes a little practice. You have to pinch it down tight on one side, but then you can roll it tightly up. You might also remember doing this on a project like in first grade when some of you made your crazy hair day projects, you did this. But it's just a really easy trick once you get the hang of it to make a spiral of paper. And I like to pull my art supply out and watch it kind of boom, pop up. So if you have a long piece, it's going to make a more tight twist. If you have a short piece, it won't be quite as spirally. And you can experiment with how it changes if you wrap it around something that's a lot fatter. Okay, so that's your first step. Start to create some twists. So I've got lots of twists that I wrapped up tight now here, and I'm going to use these twists to make some flowers. So I'm ready to start gluing them down onto my background paper. Now remember I said the kind of glue you use is up to you. I think a glue bottle would work really good to squirt out a line of glue. You can try a glue stick, that might work as well, but I think it would be a little bit trickier. But since I don't have a glue bottle and I'm using Mod Podge, I poured a little bit of my Mod Podge out into a container, and what I'm going to do is use a paintbrush. But if you decide to do this, I bet you can figure out what you should do with your paintbrush when you're done with it. What's going to happen if you leave it sitting in this glue? If you're thinking it would dry out and become really gross, you are correct, because if I let my white glue dry on this paintbrush, it's going to get really hard and it's going to be not very nice to use. So if you use the paintbrush technique, make sure you wash your brush out afterwards. So this next part is a little bit tricky. It takes some practice, but what I'm going to do is put a little glue where I want my spiral to go. I think I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to use these to make some flower shapes. But sometimes it's a little hard to tell where I want the glue to go before when I lift this back up. So what I'm going to do first is use a pencil and outline around the shape. And it might not be perfect, but that's going to help me to see where the glue should go. Oops, my video missed what I did just there, but I used my pencil to outline around my shape, and it was a little bit messy. It definitely wasn't perfect, but it showed me kind of a guide where I should put my glue. And I used my paintbrush to spread my glue. I want it to be like maybe a little bit thicker than I would sometimes do because I really want my quilling to stick. And I'm not going to worry about getting it places where I don't want it to be because this glue does dry clear. Elmer's glue is like that too. So I'm going to take my spiral now, and I'm going to put it on my glue and press it down from above. Now, this is kind of the tricky part because I don't want it to move around very much, and it might take a while for the glue to dry. So I'm going to have to be patient. I'm pressing it down, and it feels like it's sticking pretty good, and so I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to pick it up or move it or mess with it. I'll go ahead and start working on my other sections, but if I try to play with it or bump it or move it right now, it's more likely to not stick with the glue. So I do have to try to be patient. Okay, so while I've been working on my bouquet of flowers, you can probably guess which ones I twisted around something big and which one I twisted around something small so I could make it really tight. And I also changed the way I was gluing some of them down. The regular way to glue things down when you're quilling is standing up like this, but that way is definitely a little bit trickier than gluing them down like this. But you're the artist, you can decide how you want to do it. I added some details that I just glued down the regular way, some details where I had it standing up on its side, and some where it's a little bit of both. It's laying down, but it's still popping up off the page with a 3D curl. But next comes the hardest part. You can probably tell that my glue has started to dry, but I'm just going to leave it alone for a while. Because if I bump it or try to pick things up now, it's more likely to fall off. So I'm just going to go set it somewhere to dry and rinse the glue off my paintbrush so it doesn't dry all hard. All right, so my quilling project has been drying for a while, and there's a little bit of wet glue still in the middle, but it is pretty dry and sturdy. See, I can hold it up, and my 3D pieces still stand up. And this is a pretty tricky thing to do. I learned a lot while I was working on it, and I'm excited to try it again. Remember those ones I showed you at the beginning of the video? Some of those are people that have been doing this for a really long time. So it's a really cool art form because you can be very creative with it and you can create all kinds of interesting designs, but don't be discouraged if it's a little challenging at first. And this is a project you might want to be a little bit more careful with, because of the way that it's all glued together. I probably wouldn't want to pick it up by all these little pieces, but I love the way it makes an artwork that's a little bit 2D flat on the page and a little bit 3D popping up off the page. So if you guys try quilling, I would love for you to send me a picture so I can see what it looks like. I'll talk to you soon.